Hello and welcome to Dialogue's Profile Special Series. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. The high-profile success of tech founders like Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Ma have made entrepreneurship an increasingly attractive career path for college graduates in China. The country has become ever more entrepreneurial with the post-1980s generation as its driving force. But what are the major challenges for college students who are seeking to be self-employed? Are we still in the golden age for China's internet startups? And could this emerging entrepreneurship become the driver of China's growth? Today, I'm joined in the studio by one of the successful young entrepreneurs here in Beijing, Mr. Roger Ying, founder and CEO of Pandai CEO. But before we get started, let's look at this.
Government jobs remain popular among Chinese graduates. But more and more young people in China also want to follow in the footsteps of Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Ma. Roger Ying is one of them. He's the founder and CEO of Pandai, a peer-to-peer website. He graduated from Stanford in 2009, and in 2011 he started Pandai, which uses peer-to-peer online lending to conduct daily transactions and finance businesses. According to Ying's own words, in 2009 we were called illegal fundraising. In 2010 we were called underground banking. In 2011 we were then called peer-to-peer lending. And now we're called internet finance. The trading value of China's booming P2P platforms hit 250 billion yuan in 2014. That's around $41 billion and double the 2013 figure, according to the Internet Society of China. In addition to convenience in capital utilization and low trading costs, online wealth management products allow users to avoid tight interest rate controls. Experts warn that as the P2P industry experiences wild growth with no regulations, risks such as fraud, fund flight and illegal fundraising have emerged. The China Banking Regulatory Commission in September 2014 vowed to tighten regulations on P2P businesses. The year ahead will be a tough test for P2P lenders, as a large number of online borrowing projects will mature.
Welcome to Dialogue, Roger.
Thank you for having me.
I wonder if you are aware that you are the envy of thousands of young Chinese who are very ambitious and want to be Jack Ma one way or another. But do you think China has the preferential policies, has the incubation to prepare young people here for their success and to fulfill their dreams?
Being an entrepreneur in China, I think China has developed, I've seen the ecosystem in China for entrepreneurship develop over the past 5 years, and I would say there's been a lot more government stimulus into helping and encouraging new entrepreneurs. If you look at the education in China, it's also changing and gearing towards entrepreneurship. So for example, Stanford University has opened an entrepreneurship branch in Peking University, and there's a lot more foreign universities as well forming partnerships with Chinese universities, as I think we see that China's going to be becoming more important in the global economy. More and more foreigners or foreign companies see China as an important market.
But most of those who were born in the 80s are the only child of the families here in China, and they are said to be wayward, stubborn, and they are said to be the king of the little family. Now, do you think you have been seduced by this one-child family culture in China, or you have kept a distance from this and you have benefited enormously from the American education instead?
I'd say personally I'm very lucky to have a supportive family that encourages my entrepreneurship endeavors. My parents are entrepreneurs themselves, and to be frank, I actually grew up in South Africa, and my dad was an entrepreneur himself, and he managed to be successful in the apartheid era, which I'm very proud of. If you look at the American form of education, or the American education for entrepreneurship, is very encouraging. I went to school in Silicon Valley at Stanford University, and the mainstream culture in Palo Alto is basically you're either a VC or you're an entrepreneur, and there's so much encouraging towards new ideas and people trying to fulfill their dreams to change the world.
Now, part of the culture that encourages and inspires young people to be successful is that you are allowed to fail.
Right.
Do you
right.
think in Stanford you also benefit from this policy of tolerance? You still enjoy financial support after you have met some setbacks, some of which might be lethal?
Right. I think with the Silicon Valley culture, it's a famous saying is fail often in order to succeed sooner. And most people don't understand about Silicon Valley is that this is an ecosystem that's taken 30 or 40 years to form. So you have, actually when you fail, you started a startup and you fail in Silicon Valley, you're more respected as someone who's tried something new, is bold to do something that wasn't mainstream, to just join a corporate job or work for the government, etc. But living in China for over 6 years now, I see with the entrepreneurial community thriving and flourishing and people starting, and their startups might not go the way they want, but then it becomes the addition to a new idea and a new startup and people building these ideas, and the immense support community that's also building around the entrepreneurial environment here has been astounding and very quick, I might add, in the past 3 years.
Why do you think your father has been successful? What did he say to you?
Well, my dad, very, very strict person, and my dad would, I think, my dad is probably one of the persistent, most hardworking people I've met, and he always says, pride comes before a fall. So if you're too proud, etc., there's danger lurking the next day. And I think being humble and focusing on your goal and working hard towards them has been a trait that I've inherently inherited from my father.
During your college years, Roger, in the United States, you co-founded a successful social network company. It seems you fit right into the culture of Silicon Valley. But why did you to come back and to launch your own startup company here in China?
Before coming to China, I did an internship in Hangzhou for a venture capital firm, and I just felt there was an immense opportunity and an immense thrive for immense drive amongst the local Chinese people to change their society and make a better and brighter future and try new things and do new startups. And Hangzhou has been pretty much a very important part of China for incubation.
How do you define your own social banking?
Social banking is basically people lending money to other people through a transparent intermediary. So you know where your money is, you know who you're lending it to, you know the terms and rates, and you know the risks behind it. And what inspired me for this idea was Kiva.org, which was a company founded around 2007, 2008. And essentially what this was a platform like myself, Pandai, that allowed rich people in developed countries to lend to rural farmers in developing nations, such as Africa or Eastern Europe, etc. And essentially what I loved about the model was that it's social, so it's people lending money to other people, they know the story, they know who they're lending to, and it's sustainable. And it's sustainable through accountability, because that person you're lending the money to still has to pay it back. Mm-hmm. So in a sense, you create this accountable ecosystem, an accountable environment where you instead of teaching a person, instead of giving a person a fish, you teach them how to fish, and then you give them a new loan, etc. And for this has a lot of government implications that are very forward, but are right in line with where China's going now. If we look at what Xi Jinping's goals are for China today, is financial liberalization, Chinese living the Chinese dream, and creating a consumer-driven, domestic-driven economy. And if you think of the core concept of peer-to-peer lending and social banking, it is right in line with the government's policies, and I think it creates immense social value and helps the government solve a very important problem, which is how to redistribute capital from the rich to the poor, avoid inflation, and avoid inflating the money supply into the monetary system.
It's very similar to income redistribution between the low-income individuals in China to boost domestic consumption,
right,
so to speak. Before starting Pandai, you've worked for Zhu Min, well-known Chinese entrepreneur and founder of WebEx Communications. Do you feel it's beneficial to learn from the best in the industry before you start your own business?
Right. I was very fortunate to work for Zhu Min. He was a successful entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. He started WebEx and was sold to Microsoft for $2 billion. And I worked with him in he has very successful investments in China too. So learning from someone who has been both successful in Silicon Valley and in China was an immense opportunity for me. And I think Zhu Ming's story is very, very fascinating because Zhu Ming actually didn't get an education. He was held back by the Cultural Revolution, and he didn't get an education until he was 30. And since he was 30, he graduated from Zeda and then went to Stanford, and we actually studied the same degree at Stanford, started WebEx, became very successful, and came back to China to help the entrepreneurial community in China flourish. So, this is also a prime example of anyone who's motivated and dedicated enough can be successful too.
What are your tips for those young and ambitious people here in China to plan their own startup companies here?
So when I think about starting a new business, I really go by two rules. One is you have to really have a long-term view. And second is you really have to do something you're passionate about. Think about a problem that you always have, that you wish you could solve, and something that you're really passionate and you really care about. Because, if they say when you're buying real estate, the 3 golden rules of real estate is location, location, location. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, I believe it's persistence, persistence, persistence.
I think that's the very important keyword in the vocabulary of Jack Ma for his success story.
Right.
To be persistent all the time, despite all the devastating setbacks.
Right, and Jack Ma, Jack Ma's an interesting story because before he actually started Alibaba, he was trying to start Alibaba for 3 to 4 years before he actually got to start Alibaba. So it's always a typical case of, you work hard for 5 to 10 years and you become an overnight success story. But I would say is, again, you be persistent, focus on something you really care about, because there's always going to be good times and there's going to be bad times too. And it's during the tough times where your passion is really tested, whether you want to carry on and go on with the business.
Before his huge success, Jack Ma was given many cold shoulders. He failed many times to get the loans, except for Yahoo and SoftBank. They were indeed the rare exceptions.
Right.
Was that still? Is that still the case in China for young people not to have equal and easy access to loans?
I think we can all be happy about Jack Ma because he's really opened up the world for foreign investors in China. It's become an immense success story, and obviously you see this, and you have more foreign investors, but as well as local investors, seeing the type of venture capital investments or angel investments that SoftBank and Yahoo made with Jack Ma. So this is ultimately all positive for the entrepreneurial environment when you have more capital, you have government support, you have alumni from other successful companies such as Alibaba and Baidu or etc. that ultimately high profile or co-founders from the executive team who filter in, who also want to support the next generation of entrepreneurs. I think when it comes to being an entrepreneur, it's very much like a certain sense of brotherhood, because you have these crazy ideas and very few people believe in them, and once people start believing and seeing them successful, they feel like you need to pay it forward to the next generation.
It's important to have one's dream, but it's embarrassing, isn't it, that people like Jack Ma had burned tons of money before they got successful. Do you think both the investors and the young entrepreneurs are prepared for burning money?
That's a good question, and I think it ultimately comes down to the strategy of your business. In a certain sense, Jack Ma's strategy for Taobao, in a sense, was to charge nothing for payments for consumers and get the market cap. And once you had the market cap, you could monetize off his current user base. But there's also been successful stories of other entrepreneurs who bootstrapped their companies with close to no capital at all, and have managed to create very successful businesses. And it also depends on the comfort and the skill of the investor to understand the market dynamics and to read the market and to what could be a big be a big business in the future. For example, Facebook was not profitable and burnt a lot of money for the first 5 or 6 years of its incumbents, but today its IPO and its valuation is over $50 billion.
Thank you. We have to leave you there for the moment. Roger, you are watching our Dialogue Profile special series. We are discussing success stories of young people, particularly those in the IT industry. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. The success of China's reform and integration with the world will depend on great minds on the forefront of the country's opening up. Many are currently in the deep waters of reform, and behind each is an unusual story. Our special series of guest-driven programs will be a journey of discovery and rediscovery. Please stay tuned, only on Dialogue.
The year of the horse gives way to the year of the sheep. Now we celebrate this new beginning and pray for good luck.
So let's hope 2015 will be a year of good promise and good fortune.
When nature resumes its loveliness, human soul is only apt to revive.
Spring has sprung here at the new CCTV News headquarters.
You're always welcome to visit us in our new building, in our new studios, and most importantly, new programs.
I hope let's work together. My heart always goes with you. So, stay tuned.
Happy Spring Festival!
Welcome back, sir. Now, do you feel China is putting more emphasis on nurturing emerging entrepreneurship?
I feel so. There's been, in the past 2-3 years, there's been immense growth of innovation centers supported by the government, and for example in Beijing and Zhongguancun, but not only in Beijing and first-tier cities, we're also talking about second and third-tier cities.
Excuse me for a while. The Chinese education is known for emphasizing overwhelmingly the necessity and importance of discipline,
Right.
collectivism instead of individuality, as opposed to the American culture, American educational institutions, and therefore we are said to lack the spirit of independence. Therefore, the innovation spirit is far away from Chinese education. Is that true?
I don't believe that's true. I think that's a pre-made notion that is what I've experienced in the past 5 years is totally untrue. I think most people are their own
Perhaps
boss.
this is the confidence of those who were born in the 1980s, like you. You are more confident. You look like sunshine, promising. However, those in the 60s and 70s may have developed a different feeling about the same issue.
Right. I think there's always going to be a generation gap in terms of beliefs between the people in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. But, you know, in China, I believe everyone wants to be their own boss, and everyone wants to do something new, and everyone wants to go and fulfill their own dreams. You know, when people like Jack Ma have succeeded, there's a filtered down effect of people wanting to also chase their dreams. I see it every day in my sector. You know, in my sector, there's over 40 to 100 companies like myself opening each month to try and do something new and innovative, or something different, or even just plainly copy. But there is a huge general trend for people going into the corporate sector and to starting their own businesses. And you know, I remember from 4 years ago when we were trying to hire people at Pandai, was that, you know, most people are just more interested in joining an SOE, a state-owned enterprise, or a big corporate. Today is that, you know, they join the, you know, they'll come and they'll look for ideas to start their own company, or look at it as a building block was what can I learn that I can bring and carry over into my next career, or starting my own company. So in that sense, I believe most Chinese, in terms of the growth of new companies, where, you know, you look at the SME, if you look at small businesses in China, they still provide predominantly 60 to 70% of China's GDP. And
non-public sector of the Chinese economy account for 70% of the job in creation.
Job creation, right. So obviously, you know, with moreover the growing middle class of Chinese and more complex needs, and with more complex needs, more problems to solve, this is a immense opportunity for new companies to solve these type of new problems and let the ultimate lifestyle level or lifestyle level of the average Chinese move up.
Obviously, we are seeing the growth of the middle class in China. China is likely to be an olive-shaped society. What does the growing army of the middle-income families mean for consumption and for the future of young people?
I think we're higher quality of life. As you have this growing middle class, you have people, again, as I was saying, you have more complex needs. More people become more selective on the products they buy, and they have more attuned to what's better quality or what's more in line with their income levels. With more domestic consumption, this means more opportunities to start new businesses, to provide services and products that were otherwise unmet by the average consumer, by the average Chinese consumer. And from this is, I think if we look further down the line, 2 to 3 years, with Xi Jinping's goal to help Chinese live the Chinese dream, we'll see people living more in line with, having higher quality of life by the new companies that are serving these type of needs.
Better quality of life could mean many things. Among these would be more latitude, freedom of speech, freedom of the media, and demanding political participation. What do you think of politics? Are you the guy who has no interest in politics because politics mean you could enjoy preferential policies for not only startup companies but for feeling comfortable? You have your own dignity, you have your own rights.
Right.
And it is in this particular area that China often comes under criticism from the West.
I keep an eye on politics in terms of where regulation is going and how the country is doing. But I'd say for any entrepreneur out there is that when in any country you live in or any country you want to start a business, you have to respect the rules of the environment. You have to understand the environment and the frameworks and work within the frameworks. And since this is being like a guest in someone's house, you go to someone's house and you don't tell them, you don't tell them how to make the rules. And I'd say in China I think policies in China and have been very forward-thinking in terms of, especially in my industry, in the social banking industry, where they've provided moderate supervision and they've let innovation flourish. And I can give you numerous examples of, if we compare, just in this instance of the US versus China, where in the China you had the SEC regulate my similar industry and almost shut down the entire industry. So I think in China, it's important to keep an eye on politics, but also, just to be focused. And in terms of, what high quality of living means, I think first it really comes to, first having your bread and butter and being able to provide for your own family before, thinking of these other peripheral needs that you might call them.
You have become successful. Along with that comes the wealth. How do you look at the issue of wealth itself? This may set a good example or bad example for the rest of the young men who want to follow your role.
Sure. So I'm very philosophical when it comes to wealth. I think in terms of, I define being rich and being wealth as two different things. Being rich is having lots of money, and money can come and go, right? You could invest in stock and make $1 million tomorrow and be lucky, but tomorrow you might invest in stock and you might lose all your money. I look at wealth as having, the quality of relationships that I've cultivated in my lifetime, and I think with very high quality relationships, you can never be poor. There's always someone. If you do well, you'll help someone else out, and if you're going through a tough time, someone will always come to help you out. And I think through that, if you look at very successful people in China or around the world, they've always managed to cultivate very high quality relationships.
You started the Pandai 3 years ago, and now with a large internet population and financial mobility is the key word,
right?
And influx of capitals from investors at home and abroad, would you say now the golden age for China's internet startups still persists?
The golden age is still certainly persisting. If you look at all the key numbers that you were talking about, it's all in the right direction. There's a large target market. There's a growing internet population. There's a growing mobile population. There's still growth within the market. There's more monetization happening with the users that are already using mobile or internet devices. And on top of that, there's a lot of investors. As I was saying previously, a lot of investors are coming and eyeing the Chinese market, as well as a very forward-thinking government that's allowing innovation to flourish within China. So all these factors culminating together is creating a really great environment for China. There is obviously still things to learn, but in this information age, I believe things happen a lot quicker and faster than they did 10 years ago.
Roger, your business is part of the shadow banking system in this country. The Central Bank of China has said that the benefits of the sector are undeniable, but
Right.
it can also fund risky or unproductive investments, which builds up risks in the banking system. How hard is it to regulate China's shadow banking?
Number one is a very tough job for the regulators. I think but the regulators are very forward-thinking in this. About 2 months ago, I was invited to a conference in London by the World Economic Forum to discuss these certain type of issues. One thing was, what I found extremely interesting was that they had top delegates from the CBRC, the Chinese Banking Regulatory Commission, go to England to meet innovative startup companies doing something similar to what I'm doing in the UK, like myself, to discuss how the UK has developed their shadow banking or crowdfunding type of model. And where else in the world do you actually see a regulator going up to another country to understand another country's political climate? So it is a tough job. I admire them. I think that they have a very arduous task ahead. They're really working hard into understanding how to make it a fit and healthy environment for startup companies like myself, because they do see the undeniable good to this sector. But at the same time, if you over-regulate the sector, you stamp down innovation, such as what happened in the US. So I think the stance that that the regulators have taken towards this market has been great. But ultimately, if you look at this from a deeper issue, the deeper issue is how to educate the consumers about using picking a financial product, or understanding the pros and cons to taking on debt.
How do you think internet financing will transform people's diehard habits of saving and spending money in China in particular?
Sure. So internet financing is making finance more transparent, more transparent, more accessible and convenient. So there's been an influx of different types of investment products and different types of loan products into the market. Consumers now have much more choice. With more competition means pricing and has to be more competitive. When it's more competitive, this ultimately just benefits the end consumer. End consumer gets an array of products that fits their needs. And we see in the internet finance industry, we see more and more companies tackling different types of niche products, such as different types of small businesses, trade finance, or different types of specialized loan and investment products. So I see internet financing becoming a very personalized space, because each person is a complex individual and has different needs.
Perhaps the local authorities throughout the whole country will learn more about the financing vehicles on the internet. Thank you very much for your participation in this meaningful dialogue. I'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Goodbye.